Hey, welcome everybody. Thanks for joining again this week. This week I'm going to cover your ideal customer profile, how to use it, why it's so important to have one, and how to go about creating one. So going to spend about 30 minutes or so going through that. I'll try to leave a little time for questions, but feel free to throw your questions in the chat as we go. I'll do my best to keep an eye on that and answer them on the fly. But if not, I'll kind of circle back and see what we've got in the chat toward the end. There's Chris. Good morning from Las Vegas. Let me know where you are and where you're from. That would be great here off the start in the chat to kick things off. And I'll get started. So first off, why is this even important? At the end of the day, customer profile just kind of gives you a bit of a framework to really begin to understand who you're really targeting for sales and marketing. It allows you to also focus on very specific customer service initiatives that you might have for different types of customers. Allows you to really just create a common language in the business. And so on the marketing side of things, I think what it's really going to help with is really helping you identify which customers you're going to use which tactics for when trying to get more leads. And so ultimately, what we want to do is understand who they are and what their buying habits are, what their pain points are, and all these different things that we're going to cover here in the next few minutes to just really ensure that we're better at getting our marketing dialed in a way where it's affordable. First of all, we don't want to waste money marketing to the wrong people, but also just really effective and timely so that we're speaking to the right prospects at the right time and saying the right things. So a couple key things on the sales side. We want to be able to understand who it is that we're trying to serve so that sales teams and even the person answering the phone can really quickly understand who they're talking to and what questions they need to ask in order to, screen them to kind of even decide if it's a sales call worth pursuing in person, or, it could be something a little bit more along the lines of deciding, who should get the lead. Maybe you've got different types of salespeople, some salespeople that service commercial clients versus residential clients, or maybe it's service type specific, maintenance versus install. We want to understand all of our client profiles so that we can just get better at identifying who is going to handle those specific prospects and turn them into sales and how. And so this ideal customer profile sets us up for all kinds of strategy that really allows us just to be more specific in the way that we do things. So I think kind of along the lines of why, we want to be able to do all kinds of things in the business, not just sales and marketing. We want to be able to build a better way of managing like the customer experience from the time they call us to the time that we're finished a project in the case of an install, or, better customer experience for a recurring maintenance customer so that they never leave. And so ultimately we want to create customers for life out of every customer. And the way that we're going to do that best is by creating systems and processes and even products or services that really actually solve the problems that they have to solve. Or, I've always said, customers kind of buy for one of two reasons. They're either trying to solve a problem or they're seeking pleasure. They're just looking for a new, beautiful backyard. Maybe there's not a specific problem, but there's usually an underlying problem. We love to spend more time at home in our backyard, but there's nothing to do. So their problem is they don't have anything to do. And so we actually need to create this ideal customer profile so that we can better understand the needs, the pain points, and, maybe the pleasure that they're seeking. And when we do that, we get much, much better at marketing, much better at selling. We get a lot better at tailoring our services or our products to their needs. And then, of course, we get better at handling everything day to day for them, knowing who they are and what problems they have. So on that retention side, I think it's really important to really understand the customer and understand what we're likely not doing well enough right now. And then we can kind of make some changes in the way that we do things. And so I've always kind of felt like the better the customer satisfaction, the longer we're going to keep our customers. And I think everybody understands that, very basic. But the reality is there's more to it. Like, we have to really sort of get inside the minds of our customers and understand all of our different types of customers and make sure that we're actually solving for all of the issues and needs that they're facing individually. And in the landscape business, that's not easy to do because there usually is quite a few different ideal customer profiles. And the more services that you have and the more segments of the market that you serve in terms of like residential and commercial, and then the subsets within, it just gets more and more complex. And so I think oftentimes we kind of forget to really think about exactly what the ideal customer looks like for each of our services that we offer. And I think the more that happens, the more problems we end up having. Systems break, customers kind of test everything, I've always said. And the reality is when we don't really build our systems around an ideal customer profile, they usually have a lot of holes in them. And I do really see and hear this from many, many other companies, but I've lived this myself. It's just as the company scales and you add more services and more different types of customers, you really have to be on top of this ideal customer profile to make sure that the customers are actually seeing what they really expect from your company. So we want to get really specific and create one for each type of customer that we're creating, that we're servicing. And ultimately, I think when we do create an ICP, what we're really trying to do is make sure that we develop a very, very tailored approach to handling each customer so they feel like what we offer is specific to them. We want it to be familiar. We don't want our customers to have to kind of teach us what their needs are. So many, many different uses. I'll kind of run through a few here. Things like creating marketing campaigns. If you're going to seek outside help, or if you're just going to go into Google or Facebook, Meta, and start running ads, the first thing that you really need to do is decide who your target audience is. And so I think anytime you go to do any marketing campaigns, whether it's internally managed or an external partner, you really do need this. And I think I often recommend that people work with an external marketing firm because oftentimes we're great landscapers or designers or salespeople, but we're not really well aware of all the latest and greatest methods of marketing in the digital age. And so I really do think that it's great to bring in external resources and at least learn how to run ads properly if you're going to use some of that technology. And the first thing they're going to ask for is your ideal customer profile, because that is the basis for all marketing. Now, in addition, it really kind of makes it much easier for you to start to build meaningful content that actually helps them solve some of their problems, or at least helps them understand that you are the authority in that space in your region where you're working, so that they understand that they can kind of come to you and get what they're looking for, whether that's the design or a snow management contract, whatever it happens to be. Your content is creating that authority or positioning you as the expert in your space. And again, the campaigns and the content need to be crafted very specific. Otherwise, you just kind of look generic. And to be honest, most landscapers' websites are very generic. They don't really speak enough to one ideal customer profile because we do a lot of things for a lot of different people. So we kind of create these generic looking websites, which is great just for awareness, but they're not necessarily going to be strong for attracting new business organically online because it's very generic. But if you have blogs that are attached to your website where you're writing very specific articles to help people understand more about a certain topic or more about where your expertise lies, I think you'll find you get much, much better organic traffic off of those blogs. And again, we want the content to be supporting the ideal customer profile. Other sales strategies that it really supports, I think, is lead qualification. So, everybody has the same issue. The phone's ringing off the hook in April and May. And I think one of the biggest mistakes that a lot of landscape companies make is they react to every lead and they want to follow up on every lead. And I think most companies quickly realize as they start to scale how important it is to get really good at qualifying leads over the phone to minimize the number of in-person meetings. It's just not reasonable to go out and meet with everybody who calls the office. There's just too many people calling for projects that are just not of any interest, or there's not enough budget, or it's not the right type of work, or it's not in the right service area, or it's, a service you don't even provide at all. And so I think it's really important to really dial in on this ideal customer profile. Make sure whoever answers the phone is really clear on what that profile looks like, and then give them some really good questions or conversation starters that really draw out who this person is that's calling and what their needs are, and just so that we can assess quickly whether or not it actually aligns to the people that we're trying to service. Another big one, sales pitch. Most landscapers don't have a 30 to 60 second sales pitch. That in itself can be a big problem. I think just being able to simply say who you help and how you help them in less than a minute is a pretty important thing when you're meeting new people, when you're on the golf course, at the ski hill, in the pickup line at school, or meeting some friends for dinner and you happen to be introduced to somebody else. I think when you can very quickly say the type of people that you help and the problems that you solve for them in less than a minute, lots of doors open. And the better you are at doing that, the more likely you are to grow the business and really, I think, build a network effect that can really help things explode. And so it's very hard for you as an owner or as a business leader or as a salesperson, whatever you happen to seat you happen to have in the company, to really get really consistent around having those types of conversations or just having a basic sales pitch without really having this ICP to kind of become the basis. And oftentimes, again, we do service many different ICPs with many different products and services. So it starts to get more and more complex as the company scales. So we want to be able to simplify it as much as possible by at least knowing what the ideal customer profile looks like for our major business lines. Now, next up, customer support and customer service. Again, somebody's got to answer the phone in your landscape business. And if it's a smaller company, maybe that frontline person is answering phones and also fielding support and service requests. This is super common. The office manager in many companies wears many, many hats. And so again, when we go to train that person or when we go to create a system for them to manage customer needs, we want to be able to really make sure that they understand these ICPs for all the various customers that we're focused on, so that they can get a little bit more personalized in the way that they react to customer requests or follow-up needs on projects and whatnot. So we want to be really proactive, ideally, in the way that we're doing this. And so if you're using the CRM, we have tags in the CRM, which allows you to tag different types of customers. And so again, when you've got an ICP, you can go right into the CRM on LMN and create tags for your ideal customer profiles. And then when you do have customers that convert and they become paying customers, that tag allows you to sort all your different customer types and generate very, very personalized messaging, whether that be email campaigns that you might want to create, or outbound calling to get midsummer health checks in place, or maybe it's a program to convert your summer business into winter business, whatever it happens to be. You can just simply run a report in the CRM and run that report by customer profile using the tag manager. And now you can see all of your customers that fit that profile, and then you can go out and activate with some of your engagement activities that lead to either increased upsell, cross-sell revenue, or it could be just a customer check-in, just to make sure everybody that is on your residential landscape maintenance list gets their mid-season health check, to kind of make sure that they're happy with the service they're getting. And obviously, anytime we get a meeting, we want to find a way to sell them some enhancements. And so many, many different uses for an ICP, but proactive engagement is top of the list for me. I think when you've got the customers, when you've converted them, you want to keep using this to really decide how you're going to go about servicing them better on an ongoing basis. A few other good things that kind of stem from a good ICP are partnerships. I think when you really identify who that ideal client is, it becomes a lot easier to think of other people in the ecosystem that serve them. And I think it becomes a little easier to create meaningful partnerships with people that are non-competitive to you, but offering maybe similar services. That could be, a window cleaning company, or maybe it's a turf management company, or maybe it's somebody that builds swimming pools and you don't. Who knows what that is for your business? They're all very different depending on what services you provide. Feel free to throw some in the chat. I see Chris threw one in there, solar shades. When you find these other companies that are serving the same ideal customer profile, then you can create meaningful relationships with them. Take them out for lunch, describe what you do, show them some of your projects, create some synergistic marketing efforts. Who knows? You can do many, many things with great partners, as we all know. I'm a huge fan of real estate agents and builders and engineers and other service providers for luxury homes, if you're in that business. If you're in the commercial snow plowing market, who would be a great tie-in there? Well, property managers, obviously. So I'm going to want to create partnerships with property managers who manage those buildings. And so again, when I've got the ICP, I can find partners that kind of help for each customer profile. Again, looking at market expansion, what could a customer profile do there? Ultimately, what it's telling me is, hey, right now I'm servicing this customer with these service types. Maybe I could look at other service types that customer profile needs that are sort of up my alley, or something that we would easily be able to service, either internally or potentially even with a subcontractor. And it just allows me to kind of expand our service type, or it could even really expand a service area. And so again, that ICP just allows us to kind of consider market dynamics and really look at opportunities that might just allow us to grow the company, either by changing it a little bit or adding services to that ICP. So a lot of our growth strategies come from really understanding our customer, their pain points, the opportunities that we have as a company to service these problems, and obviously service more and more problems for our customer. We all know that one-stop shopping is pretty important. So this growth strategy oftentimes is heavily reliant on being laser clear on who your ICP is, or if you have multiple, who they are. And again, we always have to think about risk. And I think when we really understand the risk profile associated with each customer profile, we can really start to think a little bit more strategically about where we want to grow the business. For an example, snow plowing. I grew my snow plowing business, but I was okay slowing down the growth and avoiding really high risk business. And so I was always really aggressive about growing, but I was also really, really mindful about avoiding risk. So I didn't take any opportunities that involved retail because I knew that retail had the highest incidence of slip and fall. I've always networked a lot with other contractors, and I always knew and heard and many horror stories of the slip and fall claims on retail properties. So I tried to stay clear of those. And again, that really influenced where we focused efforts and when selling, so that we were really not ever bidding work that just didn't fit the risk profile overall in the business. So important component of deciding where to focus your sales efforts. And again, just kind of in a summary, marketing, sales, and service customization are kind of the big bullets here. This is what we're ultimately helping ourselves achieve when we create this customer profile. How do you create one? Well, it's kind of often in everybody's head in the company. The problem is you don't have common language around it, and you can't really do many things without intention, without kind of just documenting it. And so oftentimes when companies actually go to create their customer profiles, they realize everybody has a little different spin on what the ideal customer looks like, which in itself is a good lesson. I think sometimes the owner or the founder has a vision of what the perfect customer is, and then the salespeople may have a slightly different view on that, and the people answering the phone or doing the initial screening may have a slightly different version. And so what tends to happen is everybody in the business has a slightly different version of what that ideal customer is. And therefore, every time the phone rings, there's inconsistency in the way that we answer the phone, what we say we do, what we say we don't do, where we work, where we don't work. There's just a lot of inaccuracy. And I think that kind of leads to a lot of operational problems later when we try to do too many things for too many people without clear intention. It's really hard to do it well. And so I think when we get more specific with who we're working for and what problems we're solving, it just allows us to get a lot more refined in the way that we build all the components in the business. So how we create it, I think ultimately we want to look at some key information about who our typical customer is and why. So, how old are they? What gender or genders are they? Marital status, income level, occupation, the basics. You probably know this off the top of your head, what this looks like for your various services or departments in your business, but it might not be clear to everybody, or it might not be super clear to the people that it needs to be clear to. Where are you going to work? Obviously, as we start to look at markets, we always want to decide where we're going to kind of stop. And that way, when the phone rings and somebody's way outside of our service area for a specific type of work, we don't go there. But maybe it's a big opportunity, and for one type of customer or one market segment or service type, we're actually okay going outside of our service area. And so sometimes your geographic location varies by your ICP. So maybe you only do residential in a 20-mile radius, but commercial, you'll extend that out to a 100-mile radius because you're okay to set up a satellite yard for snow or something to that effect. And so again, our locations can be really tailored to the ICP. And so when we do this, the person answering the phone is much more capable of screening and setting up follow-up calls for sales teams when they know exactly what this looks like. And then, of course, the property type tells all, right? Is it a house? Is it an HOA? Is it a commercial building? Is it a Class A office? Many different types of properties. We have to know what the property type is for each ICP so that we can really understand when to say yes and when to say no, ultimately. And then obviously we want to craft the perfect sales pitch and the perfect product or service to fill the need. The psychographic information, this is more, lifestyle, values, interests, particularly if you're doing a lot of residential work. I think this gets to be more and more important. Understanding like what these type of people that you tend to be doing projects for have going on in their life. If you're going to sell luxury backyards, you kind of want to know what else these people might be interested in, or what you notice your typical customers are also spending money on. Luxury cars, luxury furniture, artwork, high-end home renovations, all of these things start to tell us where to go find partnerships, but also how to speak to them and how to message. And when you start to look at what other luxury brands are doing, if you're trying to focus on a luxury ICP, you can also kind of look at how they're marketing, where they're marketing, and what they're doing. And I think that is, oftentimes a really good indicator or a really good way of coming up with new ideas for your landscape business. Understanding the values, understanding the interests of your typical customers, all super important. I think, if you're selling commercial snow plowing and you're trying to get property managers to meet with you, might not be a bad idea to rent a box at a baseball game or a football game, and really get people to come out and, spend a little bit of social time. And again, people that are running property management companies, good chance they want to go to, a concert and be in a box, or a hockey game. It's pretty loose on the interest side of things. But if I were really looking to sell luxury backyards, it might be worth joining a private golf club and learning how to play golf. Might be worth joining a luxurious private ski resort. Some of those things really have a big impact, because people that are spending a lot of money on their backyards and their homes tend to be, part of some private clubs of some sort. And so knowing this really allows you to network better, market better, and of course, service the customers better once they become customers. More than anything, though, we're really trying to understand them before we start marketing and sales efforts, so that we get more specific about what we do and have a lot more impact on the whole process. But we want to understand how they buy. We want to understand their decision-making process and like preferences that we're typically seeing, so that we can craft a more compelling sales pitch. We can ask better questions while we're selling. We can create some more dynamic power statements that really help customers understand that we are the expert or the trusted advisor that they're looking for. And again, when we start training our staff, we really want to train our staff to understand the customer and be able to get inside of their mind. And I think this is why this component of an ICP is so important to kind of develop accurately. Common problems that they're facing, all the pain points that they're usually dealing with. They're busy people. They don't know how to maintain their property properly. Or maybe they're older people that you're targeting who, they're just not physically capable of maintaining the property anymore, or, building a brand new deck in the backyard to replace an older one on an older home, for example. So we want to really create as much detail as possible. We want to understand their pain points and challenges so that we can go ahead and do something about this. We want to understand the goals that they're typically telling us when we meet with them. We want to make sure that we kind of understand the look that they want. We want to understand the function, all these things, and make sure that they really understand what it is that we're trying to help them with. But also, as we start to create more and more content, we want to make sure that we hit them in the place where they're likely to be consuming that content. Preferred channels, influencers, experts, becoming the expert. Maybe you become a regular on a radio show if you're targeting a specific segment. Maybe older people, you get on the local news each week. There's many different things that I've heard that work. And so social media obviously being the more common this day and age, really getting your content on social media to speak to that ICP, describe the problems that you know that they have, describe the solutions, position yourself as a voice of authority, and obviously we're going to convert a lot of really good leads this way. A couple of examples that are worth considering. Residential, just, here's what it should look like loosely. We want to understand the demographic that we're servicing, their likely income level, or, where we would need it to be able to afford what we're selling. Kind of not necessarily getting super specific with their occupation, but understanding generally what they're going to be doing. If somebody's working as a carpenter, they're unlikely to hire us to put in a patio. They're more likely to be a do-it-yourselfer. And so we want to understand their general type of occupation so that we're looking for, so that we can kind of uncover their needs a little bit more specifically. We want to know where they are. We want to understand their specific psychographic information, any key behaviors for that type of buyer, typical goals that we see, where they're likely to pick up information. And then, of course, we want to get laser clear on their pain points and challenges so that we can get really good at selling them and knowing their problem before we start to sell them. We want them to be laser clear in our mind so that we can really speak to them in a really authoritative method without scaring them off. We want to be able to ask good questions that really allow them to surface their problems. And then we want to just kind of help them solve those problems by ensuring that they know how we would solve that problem for them. And it's just much easier when we can prepare in advance, train our sales teams in advance, and get really good at asking the right questions and helping them find the right answers. On the commercial side, this is going to look a little bit different, but again, it's kind of the same in the sense the breakdown. But now it's, if I was selling a big commercial office park, I'd want to kind of, if I was going to focus on that, I'd want to understand, like, who typically am I selling to? Well, I'm going to look at a few different profiles, the people that were coming up, the people that we're meeting with most often in that segment, and try to build out a profile for that type of buyer and understand what their buying behavior is, and what makes that so different than other segments of the market that we might be servicing. Obviously, the most important thing here is to figure out their pain points and match them up with our solutions, and be really good at asking those questions that kind of draw the pain points out to the surface to give us an opportunity to describe how we'd solve them. And so again, it has to be very specific to the type of work and the type of buyer. Next week, I'm going to kind of take this one level deeper. We're on a 10-week sales focus here. Next week, we're going to go a lot deeper. I'm going to talk about how to craft those compelling questions and those compelling statements that really help you really sort of create desire in the conversation to the point that they want to engage with you, whether that's for a sale or for an estimate or a proposal or negotiating a proposal or a contract. The questions that you really create have to be tied to drawing out those pain points. And I'm going to talk through how to do that. I'm going to give you some examples. I'm going to explain how I did that to really develop my business, to really hyper focus on a few very specific ideal customer profiles, and eventually, really just grow a very large landscape business with very few customers. I didn't want a lot of customers. I just wanted the right customers. And so what I really did was focus on very specific personas, very specific partnerships that would get me more opportunities with the right leads. And I'm going to kind of go through that process and explain how to use this ICP to really develop relationships with these buyers that we're looking for. All right, take a couple questions here. Once you've developed your ICPs, how would you recommend introducing the ICPs? and what it means to the team so that everybody's involved? That's a great question, Julie. What I would do here is once you've got them developed, just like I showed you in a slide format, I would just have a meeting with everybody, roll out the ICPs and ideally the pain points that you've established with some really compelling questions and statements that you would use when speaking to those type of prospects on an inbound phone call when they're calling your office, or when you're doing cold call sales, maybe if you're doing that in the business today. In any case, we want to really roll out the profiles and talk about how to use them. And so depending on the role, if it's, as I said, the office manager, they might be using it for screening. The sales team might be using it for uncovering pain points to drive more desire. And so different people in the company are obviously going to use these different ways. And so what I'd recommend is you give a high level overview, like I did today, of why we're rolling these out and how we're going to use them. And then I'd probably go more specific and workshop with each role in the company of how the ICP is going to be used in their day-to-day. Again, could be screening, could be sales, could be a customer service person. It could even be a crew leader, just understanding the customer profiles better. And so everybody's going to have a different use. That I would recommend is follow-ups, but the initial rollout, I would just kind of explain what they are, get specific, show them your ICPs, and then just talk about how you're going to utilize them throughout the company. Any other questions? It's quiet today. Not seeing any other questions for this week. Well, I think we're good. If there's no more questions, we'll sign off. We're actually on schedule for a change. We tend to run over on these. Really appreciate everybody joining. And again, next week I'll be back to continue this conversation. In the meantime, you're always welcome to follow along on LinkedIn or Instagram. I generally post some daily content there. And oftentimes I kind of tie what I'm talking about each week here into a theme online as well. So always follow along there. There's usually some stuff that I throw in there that might be very easy to cut and paste and use in the business. Thanks again for joining. Appreciate you taking the time out of your busy week, as always. Have a great week and good luck. Stay cool. It's hot just about everywhere this week.